There's no doubt about it, one of the biggest action figure lines of the 80s was G.I. Joe, but sadly not every country had G.I. Joe action figures. Over in the UK, instead of having G.I. Joe, they had Action Man. I know it's not a very exciting name, but that's what they had. But what about Spain? What do they have? Did they have Action Man? Did they have G.I. Joe? No, in the late 80s they released MadelMan 2050. Now before you tell me in the comments that I'm pronouncing it wrong, that's what my computer rated it as. Listen to this.
MadelMan.
MadelMan 2050 was the G.I. Joe line of Spain. First released in 1988, the line lasted until 1990. It was made by toy company Exton. And as far as I can find, it's the only action figure line they made. And they made a lot of these figures, and for an action figure line you probably never heard of, they're actually pretty darn cool. The line would be made up of action figures and accessories broken down between a good team and a bad team. The good team was made up of the Coda astronauts. They were from Earth, and they were used as the only defense against the evil Zorkons. These was reptile humans that could take human form or have a reptile face. Think kinda like V. And they were from a desert planet. And that planet was called Zarkonia. Again, I'm trying to pronounce these the best way they can. I mean, this is a guy that can't even pronounce Jerusalem. So go ahead and tell me in the comments I'm saying it wrong. Anyway, these astronauts had to fight the evil Zorgons, who find they love Earth because it's starting to heat up. And these reptile villains, they love a cooler, hotter planet. And not only that, they live inside volcanoes so they can get extra strength. Talk about a villain. That's a villain right there. This figure line only lasted for 2 series, but a lot did get released. There was a third line planned for 1990, but that line was canceled when the company went bankrupt. If you're looking for them, Season 1 is pretty easy to find, but Season 2, sales were down and that was a lot harder to find. But let's take a look at this awesome toy line. First, let's look at the astronauts. Coda, C-O-T-A, however you say it. Let's check out the accessories. There was this playset, Basetron 2050. It looks pretty awesome to play with. And then they had ships or robots that came with figures. There was Clone Star. There he is right there in all blue. There was Defender. Looks like some kind of green bug. And then there was Sentinel. I think that name's been used in a lot of action figure lines. And then there was a spiral looking one called Tarantula. You know what I'm trying to say. And to round out the accessories was the Transcon. As for the astronauts themselves, let's take a look, starting with Series 1. There was Bran. No, not Brandon, just Bran. There was Darman. That's one wacky name. And what about Johnny? No, his name wasn't Johnny, I'm just teasing it. His name was Karsten, but instead of with a C like Johnny Carson, it was started with a K. And to round out Series 1, there was Zan, another name you hear a lot in toy lines. For Series 2, released in 1990, you got Bran once again. And of course there was the re-release of Dorman. Zan became Deltok Zan. And then you had an updated release of Carson. And then just a plain old ordinary Zan. Zan. Now let's look at the villains of the line, starting with the accessories. That was the Batrus. That's right, Batrus. Then there's the Dragotrack. That thing looks pretty awesome. And this looks like it came straight out of Masters of the Universe. The Falcon. No, not the Millennium Falcon, just the Falcon. And then there was Scorpion. Isn't that a badass sounding name? Let's look at these reptile alien action figures. One thing probably heady for collectors, you could buy these showing the alien face or the human face. So, if you're a collector of this line, you might have to pick them up both. Let's take a look at the figures. There was Lagard. I've never in my life met anyone named Lagard, but that's a cool sounding name. There was Riptus, which is an odd name for a reptile. Riptus the reptile. And then there was Saurius. That sounds like someone that needs to apologize. And to round out Series 1, oh Lord, let me try this one. Seperton? Hey, I'm bad enough with English names as it is, and these were released in Spain. But let's take a look at the bad guys from Series 2. There was Alacto Laggard. And then just a plain Laggard. And there was Reptes, again, Reptile, whatever his name was. And the guy that's always sorry, Saurius. And Serapion. As you can see, these are mostly the same figures, released on a different card, and it looks like they come with a comic book. A lot of information about this line is hard to come by, and I know these pictures are small and grainy, and I apologize for that. But we're talking about a toy line released in Spain back in the 80s. Come on, you can't have 4K photos of that. But before we wrap up this video, there was 2 unreleased figures. There was a Green Beret called Commando Zan. And the other unreleased figure was Econ 3 range. I know, go ahead and start in the comments telling me how I pronounced all these wrong. But this is a line of action figures you probably have never seen, unless maybe you grew up in Spain in the late 80s. But they look pretty awesome if you ask me. They're really good detail, they come with some really fun accessories, they just look like they'd be a lot of fun to play with, and I don't know why they never got imported over to the US. Hey Super 7, hey NECA, hey Playmates, it's time to blame MadelMan 2050 to the US in 2023. But I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, thumbs up and like my content. Subscribe to the channel. We'll talk again soon.
Hey, Junkman channel popping though.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.